Today we'll be exploring Vaisakhi, the most well-known and celebrated festival in the Sikh calendar. We all know the common narrative, but in this episode we'll go beyond that with the help of J.S. Gadawal's Master of the White Hawk and have our questions answered by Dr. Kamleep Singh. Together we'll explore the connection between goats and Vaisakhi, so join us today as we take a journey down the rabbit hole of written sources regarding Vaisakhi. Be sure to check out the other extracts or listen to the full podcast episode to find out more. Okay, you mentioned the Panchmukh there, which we will get to in a second, but I just want to go back to the goats. You can argue Korshish is going off Kaur Singh's account, and Kaur Singh is the one to mention the presence of the goats being beheaded. Korshish slightly changes his tune in terms of he's saying that it's the individuals who come forward that slaughter the goats, not Guru Sahib himself. To be fair, it doesn't matter who does it. The goats are slaughtered as far as pre-colonial texts are concerned. What is going on there? Like, what is because obviously you would have had to consider it in your PhD thesis. What's going on there? But secondly, is that where Chatka comes from? Is that why at Hazur Sahib they will do Chatka of goats and then do Shastra Puja, etc. with its blood? Like, I guess what I'm actually asking is, what's going on in the initial Vaisakhi ceremonies? And then secondly, how has that tradition kind of been continued, in particularly by the Nihangs?
The Khalsa Panth is a military organization. And remember there's this book by this French scholar, well, he wrote it in French, and it says the Sikh military, the Khalsa Panth, the military of the Sikhs or something. You must have heard it. You must have seen it. I've got a copy of it here in my library.
Thank you.
And I thought, wow, this guy was intelligent.
Yeah,
he already put it there, yeah? Because he's read through these, like Haridhan Gupta, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Like similar to that.
Yeah, similar kind of like
writing in French.
History, yeah.
And I know a bit of French. My daughter's French. I know what I remember Tanda. And I've read through it and I was astounded by his knowledge. And so, the thing is, if you've got a military organization, what is the ethos of any military? Sacrifice. What is Chatka of a goat? A sacrifice. What is the Chatka of the Panch Pyare? Beheading them. A sacrifice. That's why Trump, in a very bad tone, he said Guru Gobind Singh believed in human sacrifice.
Ernest Trump, not Donald Trump. Just
Ernest Trump.
Yeah.
This is what Trump said in Munich in one of his talks to Christians, because they were against this whole idea of human sacrifice and paganism, right?
So they barbarian.
Yeah. So he equated it as the same, the Panch Pyare. So look, let's just say, let's not try and be historical about it. Right? Let's try and take it away from...
Let's not be rational.
Let's get away from rationality.
Because it ties you up in knots.
It ties you up in knots.
Yes.
Let's look at the essence of why the Chatka or the beheading of something is involved. What does it represent symbolically? That's how you should look at Indian texts. What do they symbolize? Yeah. What's the essence? It means sacrifice.
Yeah.
And in the Mahanirvana Tantra, a very ancient text in India, you have the idea that a human being has pashu birti. We have animal desires. Then it says above the animal desires, we have human needs of love and emotions. And it says above the human needs, we have veer, we were warriors. We have the ability to sacrifice for nobility. And above that is Parampurusha, enlightenment. You look at Joseph Campbell, a hero with 1,000 faces, yeah? The same thing, isn't it? The same idea. Look at Sigmund Freud's psychology is essentially what we just said there, right? Yeah. Super consciousness, id, human, layers, right? It's the same principle, right? And so the Chatka represents killing or sacrificing our animal nature for the wider good.
Yeah,
right. You can put it to that.
Yeah,
and the Panch Pyare giving their heads, sacrificing themselves, what for? For the Khalsa Panth. Yeah. And so whether it happened or not, I definitely believe that Guru Gobind Singh took the Panch Pyare's heads. I definitely believe it. Other people won't. I say it's not historical, but I believe there's a lot more to reality than meets the eye. And I just want to go into something, backtrack a little bit. Sure. Because I've just got one more page on this in my PhD, but if I may...
No, please
share it with the sun.
This is why I turn up.
And so, Ratan Singh Bungal, I remember people say 1841 for Bungal's work, but it's more like 1800.
Okay.
Right? It's more like 1800. That also needs to be looked at. And I believe that Professor Mann, not of Leicester, but Professor Mann, ex Santa Barbara, New York, he wrote a whole essay that Octoloni and Captain Murray were much earlier. And so 1841 cannot be the date of Panth Prakash. It must be much earlier.
Okay.
When the British were getting their informants, to give knowledge about, what they were interested in. And so he says that Guru Gobind Singh, after reciting the 33 Savaiye, which we already said, and criticizes the Masands and praises the Khalsa, the Ardas was performed, then the beginning of Bajita Natak was said, and then the Jap we've talked about, and then Anand, some parts of Rera, some Varsi Bhagoti Ji ki. And then Bhai Mani Singh relates this a little bit, that Ard Granth was for devotion and Dasam Granth was for war. And then this was stirred and included a composition from the Charitra Upakyan. And then basically you can find this in their work. And then if you go back to Senapat, which was earlier, he illustrates a strong relationship between the Khalsa and its finalized military role. So you have to look at all of this in a military sense. Does that make sense? Or ethos of sacrifice.
We're trying to look at it from a modern religious sense, and it doesn't match up.
It's not going to match up.
It can't
match up.
Yeah.
Then Senapat describes the event by reiterating the verses of the Teti Savaiye.
So is the Teti Savaiye basically that?
Of course,
it's basically telling you exactly what to do.
In a sense. And he narrates, those who join the Khalsa should abandon the Masands.
Again.
And form a direct relationship to the Guru, including the givings of offerings. Right? That's Senapat. That's on in many verses throughout his
there's a lot of talk about.
Yeah, many verses. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 verses reiterating that.
And if not more.
Yeah, if not more. And then he also talks about the prescription of ritual head shaving. So we're talking about the Brahmanistic aspect. Yeah? This is also within the book. This is obviously, that we must keep Gish, and Adari and all that, to renounce the hukka, to get a thing of the thoughts, to get people addicted. And then here, what you talked about very early on in our interview, the final command is the Khalsa to abandon all social relations with the 5 retrograde groups. So Masands, and I've put here old system of Sikh officials with dioceses. Meaning, Tirmali, Ram Rai, Kurimar, killers of daughters, women, female infanticide, feticide. Why Jasa Singh Ramgariya was excommunicated. And then the 10th Guru with the Dasam Granth gives the following account of the Masands. If you want to serve the Masands, they say, go and fetch us all your wealth. Go immediately and hand over all your riches. And that is Umbra Savaiye, so the 30 Savaiye, verse 29, which is a feature of all early hagiographic texts of it in there. The most recognizable martial feature of the new Khalsa, present in both modern and traditional Sikh practice, is the wearing of arms and gish, as well as the addition of Singh and Kaur to male and female names respectively. It's interesting that Sukha Singh calls the belt of the sword a Gata Janol, a Brahman thread. Sukha Singh Gurbalas here, and that's page 70. This new identity was the formalization of the identity the Gurus had already taken on for themselves and consists of the symbolic military attributes of an Indian ruler, which is clearly a continuation from the institutions established by the Sikh Guru. It is clear the dialogues in the Dasam Granth Sahib are an essential part of this military transformation. And I go on to about the feeding the Khalsa, and I might as well talk about that yet because we mentioned it earlier. After the first Khandik Kapal ceremony was concluded, the 10th Guru then fed the Khalsa before the Brahmins. This symbolized the breaking away from the Varnal caste system of India. Gaur Singh includes passages from the Dasam Granth is said to have repeated at this time. He provides an explanation of them, as well as a date of 1689, when this composition was first written. The Guru says to Misra, the Brahman offended by this act, Misra, you only receive what is written in your destiny. Do not be angry and overcome your emotions. I've committed no crime. I did not forget. Do not be angry with me. I have won battles with their help. It pleases me to serve them. Yeah? Which is very, anyone who's read that Savaiya is simple it's clear. Simple to understand, to even for people with bad Punjabi like ourselves, And so that's the major narrative. And then actually after that, then the Joby of Thought is completed around 1698.
Okay.
So we're talking in sections, you see.
Yeah. Whereas actually it's one big.
Yeah. And let's look at Ram of Thought, which finishes that Joby of Thought.
Yeah.
पाएंगे जब ते तुमरे तत्व को आंक तेरे ने आयो राम रहीम पुराण कुरान ने कह मत एकला मान्यो सिमरत शास्त्र वेद सबे बॉपी के हम एक ना जानियो सिरी अस्पान कृपा तुमरी कर मैं ना को सब तो बगानियो दोरा सरद्वार छाड़ के गया द्वार बाहेंगे की लाजस गोविंद दास is doesn't it fit everything we just said? And then that was completed then. And the Ugardanti and all this around the same period, right? So it's the same idea, right? Just wanted to kind of find.
No, I love that.